So looking back on last year of 2016, there's some fantastic books that I got to read that year. So I want to share with you guys my top 10 favorite books of 2016. Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. I am here today to share with you guys my top 10 books of 2016. I picked 10 of my favorites that I'm going to show you guys today. I didn't really rate them, although I do have a number 1 favorite book that I read and a number 2 favorite book, but everything else is quite close together, so it was really hard to actually put them in order of my least to best favorite. But I did group them kind of sort of together, so I'm going to go through those and just share with you some of the books I really enjoyed this year and my favorites that I got to read this year. So the first two are books that I actually don't have physical copies of. These are books I borrowed from the library. And the first one being Everland by Wendy Spinelli. Now this was one of the Owl Crate books, I believe for September, October, I'm not even too sure. But it was one of the Owl Crate books, so it sounded interesting to me. So I borrowed it from my library and absolutely loved it. It was a steampunk retelling of Peter Pan. So it's set in a steampunk alternate history. So it's definitely got an alternate world, alternate history type feeling to it, and a lot of really great steampunk elements. I'm normally not a steampunk person, but I thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I really like the way the author incorporated all of the Peter Pan characters and elements into this world. It just worked so well, and I'm looking very forward to the continuation of the series. I thought it was a standalone, but thankfully it turned out to be a series. The next book was a book I had put off because I heard it was graphically violent. I don't know where I heard this, if it was a review on Goodreads, but I decided to pick it up because it sounded like it had a little bit of a Lunar Chronicle vibe to it, and I was in Lunar Chronicle withdrawal, so I picked up Stitching Snow by R.C. Lewis. Stitching Snow is a sci-fi retelling of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I really enjoyed this book, and it completely took me by surprise. It played so well with my imagination, and I could really envision and see the action and the characters that were going on. It had really great characters, and all of the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs type elements were really well put into a science fiction world that I really enjoyed. Like I said, it did have Lunar Chronicle vibes, but it was a really fun and, can I say original because it's a retelling, but it was a fun original take on a fairy tale classic. The next 4 books I want to mention are all by the same author, and they are all the books that were published this year by Melanie Dickerson. Melanie Dickerson is one of my favorite authors. I really enjoy the way she writes characters. I really enjoy the way she writes a good story and the way she brings a story full circle. So the book she had published this year, one of the first ones was A Spy's Devotion. This is the first book in the Regency Spies of London series. This was a different direction for her, which I really enjoyed. It had that Jane Austen kind of etiquette, drama, and politics fun that goes along with a Regency time period story, but it also had that spies and espionage. So it was a completely different time period for her, as well it was a original, not based on a fairy tale retelling story. So it was really fun to see Melanie go into a different direction and era, and it was a really well-written story with Melanie's trademark fantastic characters. With her fairy tale retellings this year, she came out with the second book in the Thornbeck fairy tale retelling series, The Beautiful Pretender. I got this book for a LitFuse blog tour, which I will leave linked somewhere, my review for that, and I really enjoyed this one. This is her second Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it's actually my favorite of the 2 Beauty and the Beast retellings. The characters I just loved so much more, and they were so much more in depth in this one, I think, a little bit. As well, this series combines actually 2 fairy tales. So this one had The Princess and the Pea, which was a really interesting concept how she put that one in there with the Beauty and the Beast. And both of those were just so well done in that historical setting. What I really liked about this one was how she made me fall in love with one of the side characters, Magdalene. She wasn't a main character, but I thoroughly enjoyed her character, her integrity, and just who she was as a character. And I'm so excited that she's actually the main character for her next book in this series, because I already fell in love with her as a side character in this book. The next two books are the last two books so far in the Hagenheim fairy tale retellings, and that was The Golden Braid and The Silent Songbird, The Rapunzel, and The Little Mermaid retelling. I loved these books as well as The Princess Spy because these three books tend to really bring full circle and really connect the Hagenheim fairy tale retellings series completely together. And instead of just going through all the siblings of the original couple from The Healer's Apprentice, these books are actually bringing everything full circle and connecting everything so very well. The Golden Braid actually happens at the same time with the same events as The Princess Spy, but from a different perspective and kind of from a behind the scenes. And it connected it really, really well. Now, The Silent Songbird was her Little Mermaid retelling, and it was really well done. I really enjoyed this Little Mermaid retelling. I was so glad to find one that I loved, and I loved all the elements and the character and how she really was a fish out of water in the world that she ended up in, and it was just so well done. But what I really liked about this one is this connects the Hagenheim fairy tale retellings through The Princess Spy and The Merchant's Daughter to everything. So this is like the connection book between these two. There is the full connection and the full circle story made within the last three books, The Princess Spy, The Silent Songbird, and The Golden Braid. Loved it, and I loved how she did that. Now, the next one was a bit of a surprise for me because it was a Christian fiction contemporary, and I do not read contemporary, and it was also an adult contemporary fiction, but it is highly appropriate for young adult as well. And that was Close to You by Kira Isaac. This was, like I said, a contemporary romance that takes place in New Zealand, and it follows a die-hard Tolkien fan who works on the sets and locations of the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies. So Alison Shire is this die-hard Lord of the Rings Tolkien fan, and then she meets Jackson Gregory, who is faking to be a Tolkien fan to impress his long-lost uncle to help him save his business. Shenanigans ensues once Alison discovers, which didn't take long, that he was a fake Tolkien fan, and a lot of fun happened from that. I really loved how it just really spoke to my nerdy heart, and it had all of the behind the scenes, the great quotes and the great elements from Tolkien kind of really played into the lives of these characters, and they were just brought together through that. But I also really liked how the relationship was developed and how the characters developed and grew from their past mistakes. So it was just really well drawn out romance and story, and of course it just spoke to my nerdy little heart about Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. So it was just a lot of fun, and I was surprised to be that much excited about a contemporary adult Christian romance, which I do not read at all on a regular basis. The next book was one of my most highly anticipated books for this year, and that was The Calling by Rochelle Decker. This is the second book in the Sears trilogy, and the second book to The Choosing, which was my favorite book of 2015. I really liked this one as much as I still loved it and still like the continuation of Carrington and Remco's story. This one took a completely different turn, so there's some things that I still really liked the characters and what they were going through, but there's some other stuff that is kind of taking a weird turn for me. But it was still a really thrilling read. It was another book that I read really quickly and really enjoyed. So I'm interested to see, and I'm currently reading the third book right now, so I'm really interested to see how that one's gonna play everything out together. It did take a different turn because The Choosing really had that CSI murder mystery kind of thing going on in the background, whereas this one has more of this thrilling underground battle between the authority cities. So it definitely took a completely different turn. Now, the last two books are rated my top and second top favorite books of 2016. And my second favorite book of 2016 was Heartless by Marissa Meyer. I really, really liked how this was done. I identified with Catherine so much in this book, and I think that's why I really enjoyed it. I also really like the way Marissa Meyer wrote these characters and wrote this kind of story. Even though you understand what the ending is going to be, because this is a story about the Queen of Hearts before she is the Queen of Hearts. So you know she's going to turn into that crazy off with their head queen in the end, but it's just really interesting to see where she came from before that and how that all came to be. It was really well done. The ending did feel a little rushed through, but everything really played out together. And I also like a lot of the Alice in Wonderland elements that you kind of see how they became to be as well. So there's a couple of characters you see kind of their background story as well, and it was just overall a lot of fun to read in a great whimsical tale. It just felt very whimsical and very in that Alice in Wonderland mode, but had a normality to it, like this is what it was. But then with Marissa Meyer, just her fantastically done characters. I'm planning on doing a full review of this one as well, and it was just a surprise, and I was so excited to read another Marissa Meyer book this year. Now, my number one favorite book of 2016, you might think is biased, but I assure you it is not. I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed the writing, and that was Unblemished by Sarah Ella, was my favorite book of 2016. I was actually not expecting this to be my favorite book of 2016, even though my friend Sarah Ella wrote it. I wanted the book to stand on its own feet. I tried not to hype myself up too much just because it was my friend's book, and just really go into the story. But also knowing Sarah Ella and knowing what she loves as a reader, I kind of also understood that I was really going to enjoy this as a reader, and I really did. Now, after Melanie and I did our live show with her for our book club, I really started to love and appreciate this book a lot more for some of the things that I got a bit more in-depth of an idea from, and then just got to really appreciate this book and some of the meaning and some of the messages Sarah Ella had in here. The book itself and its writing really took me by surprise, really got me hooked into a story, and really got me invested in some characters and what is going to happen with them. So overall, just a fantastic debut novel from Sarah Ella. So those are my top 10 favorite books of 2016. Let me know in the comments below if you read any of these or what your favorite books of 2016 were. I would love to find out some new favorites that I might even enjoy. So leave those down below, and I would love to chat with you guys. So that's it for me today, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!